Caribbean nationals in the US. This could change your life overnight. A new immigration law was just signed into effect, which many never saw coming. It could mean detention without conviction, families ripped apart, and a major crackdown on immigrant communities. If you or someone you love lives in the US without full legal status, what we are about to reveal could change everything. A new law, the Laken Riley Act, just went into effect, and it comes with major consequences. Some are calling it a necessary step for public safety. Others are calling it an attack on immigrant communities. One thing's for sure, this is not business as usual. This act allows the US government to detain undocumented immigrants accused of certain crimes even before they're convicted. Theft, shoplifting, even some minor offenses could land people in detention with no chance of bond. Families could be separated overnight. And if states think the federal government isn't enforcing immigration laws strictly enough, they now have the power to sue. That's right, US states can now legally challenge the federal government over immigration enforcement. What is the Laken Riley Act? Signed into law by President Donald Trump on January 29, 2025, the Laken Riley Act was named after a young nursing student from Georgia who was tragically murdered by an undocumented immigrant. In response, lawmakers pushed through strict policies to tighten immigration enforcement. At its core, the act does three significant things. 1. Mandatory detention. Any undocumented person arrested for crimes like theft, burglary, assault on police officers, or crimes causing serious bodily harm can be immediately detained, even if they haven't been convicted. 2. State lawsuits against the federal government. Individual states can now sue Washington if they believe immigration laws are being too loosely enforced. 3. Expanded power for law enforcement. The act strengthens federal and state agencies' ability to detain and deport undocumented immigrants accused of certain crimes. For many Caribbean nationals in the US, this is more than just another immigration law. It could negatively impact families across the country. What this means for immigrant communities. Imagine this: your loved one is accused of shoplifting. No conviction, no trial. But because of this act, they could be detained indefinitely with no chance of getting bail. Families are left scrambling, children are left without parents, and communities are thrown into chaos. Critics argue that this act violates due process by punishing people before they're proven guilty. Immigrant advocacy groups warn that it could lead to racial profiling and massive family separations. Even worse, the law does not allocate specific funding to handle the expected surge in detentions, which could lead to overcrowded and under-resourced detention centers. US Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE officials, have already admitted that they do not have enough money to enforce this law without making drastic decisions, like mass deportations. Let that sink in. Why some say the act goes too far. The Laken Riley Act has sparked a heated debate in Washington and beyond. Supporters argue it's a necessary measure to keep criminals off the streets. But critics say it's unjust and extreme. Here's why. Detention without conviction. Many people arrested will be detained indefinitely, even if they are innocent. Racial profiling concerns. The act may disproportionately affect people of color, especially Caribbean and Latino communities. Mass family separations. Families with mixed immigration status face new risks, even for minor accusations. Economic devastation. Immigrants contribute billions to the US economy. If mass deportations happen, businesses, especially those relying on immigrant labor, could suffer. So, who wins and who loses? The reality of immigration. Enforcement. Enforcement of immigration laws has historically been selective, often influenced by political climate rather than public safety. Many detained immigrants have no violent criminal records. In fact, some have been detained simply for traffic violations or paperwork errors. Another crucial factor: the system is overwhelmed. Immigration courts are backlogged, and detention centers are already overcrowded. Adding thousands of detainees due to this act could push the system to a breaking point. Think about this. If you have a loved one in the US without full legal status, this law puts them at greater risk than ever before. What would you do if they were detained with no timeline for release? Bonus facts. Details you need to know. 1. Immigrants commit fewer crimes than US citizens. Studies show that immigrants, documented and undocumented, commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens. But laws like the Laken Riley Act paint a different picture. 2. Jamaicans in the US could be at risk. The US has a long history of deporting Caribbean nationals. Hundreds of Jamaicans have been sent back in recent years, often for minor offenses. This law could dramatically increase those numbers. 3. The cost of enforcement is sky high. Detaining thousands more people means billions in additional costs, with no clear plan for funding. 4. Some Democrats supported this law. While conservatives backed the act, some Democrats also voted for it, showing that immigration crackdowns have bipartisan support. What you need to do now. If you are a Caribbean national in the US or have family there, stay informed. Immigration policies can change lives overnight. Talk to an immigration attorney if you think you or a loved one could be affected. More than anything, don't ignore this. Because when laws like this pass, silence isn't just dangerous, it's costly. Did this shock you? What do you think about the Laken Riley Act? Drop a comment below. And if you want to stay updated on laws that affect Jamaicans and Caribbean nationals, subscribe now to this channel, Impacting Jamaica. Stay informed. Stay prepared.